everybody, Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com. Welcome to another episode of Around Town. On this segment, because we're doing a couple of segments down on Around Town, we've got the pianist Jake Shapiro is on the show this morning. He is doing a very special show November 9th at 7:30 p.m. in a very unique spot. They started doing music up there about a year and a half ago. It's a great place. I've been up there before to hear music and also to do some private event playing up there myself. It's in Kenilworth. It's at Assembly Hall in Kenilworth, 410 Kenilworth Avenue, KenilworthAssemblyHall.com for tickets because you're going to want to get those. So Jake, thanks for jumping on real fast. This is an exciting show coming up on November 9th at 7:30. The Beatles Reimagined. So let's talk about this. This is with your quintet. And let's talk about the project first. How did the project come about? And you must love the Beatles in order to put this whole thing together. So what inspired you with that type of music?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited to be part of the series. Like for so many people, the Beatles is extremely nostalgic for me. I grew up listening to this music with my dad's favorite band. Every Sunday morning growing up, we would listen to Breakfast with the Beatles on WXRT. And it just has always been a part of me, always been a part of my life. And I've done a couple Beatles arrangements through the years. But I don't know. I just felt it was time to put something like this together. I think always in the back of my mind, I wanted to do a project like this. And it's really meaningful to be able to present this music, all brand new arrangements.
And this music really, I mean, because, a lot of people have played a lot of the Beatles tunes in the jazz format. It just lends itself so much, just playing it straight, but then even reharmonizing it and reimagining the grooves and reimagining the arrangements. That type of music just continues to live on and organically can grow over the years as it has for 40, 50 years now, which is amazing to me. It's been around that long.
It's crazy. I mean, I've always loved the Beatles, but I have just a much deeper appreciation for what they've done, kind of going through all this music. And I must have listened to everything in preparation for this project. It's such great music, such great songwriting. And you're right, it stood the test of time. I think this music is still relevant. It's finding new audiences. And so it's cool to be able to kind of put my own spin on this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and actually this is kind of timely, right? Because they just actually today are putting out a new Beatles tune. Like the last one, they used AI, for those of you that don't know. They used AI to pull off some of John Lennon's vocals from a 1972 or 71 cassette. Paul McCartney, Ringo. It's an amazing, I haven't heard the track yet, but the whole process on how they did it, but it's an actual new Beatles tune that they just put out, kind of an unfinished tune that they just finished. So that's coming out today, and you're playing on November 9th at 7:30 at Assembly Hall in Kenilworth. Talk a little bit about who's in the group. Now, the Beatles Reimagined, is this also a recording of it, I'm assuming, and it's coming out or it's out already? Because I don't know if I read that yet. I heard some of the tracks and a couple of the tracks you sent along and they sound great. So I'm just curious, is this a project that's already out or is it coming out?
So we're actually going to go into the studio the following day on Friday. And I don't know if I'm going to release any of that music yet. I really feel like this project is something that's relatable to a lot of people. I think it has some legs. So I'm hoping to be able to book some more shows with this. But I think in the future I'd love to release an album of this music. I
love the fact, because you're like probably the fifth or sixth person I've had on the show that actually puts a gig together, plays the gig live, and then goes in the studio, which I think is a great process because you can play the stuff, you've got it fresh in your mind, probably rehearse before you even play the gig, then you play the gig, and then the next day you go in. Now it's like you guys are playing a lot more naturally than just all showing up in the studio and running through some rehearsal stuff and then trying to record tracks. I love that process. I think it's great, especially for this type of music.
Yeah, I've had too many bad experiences in the past, so I know better now.
Well, talk about who's in the group too.
Yeah, sure. It's a great band. I'm excited to play with these guys. So I have a singer, Danielle Wirtz. She's coming in from New York from the show, and Danielle's someone that I've great friends with, I've worked with for years. So I'm really excited to have her on this project. And then the rest of the band are local Chicago musicians. I have Neil Carson on saxophone, um, and I have Clark Summers on bass, and Neil Hemphill on drums.
Great rhythm section. I mean, that it's going to be really hip to hear that group, and Danielle is just wonderful. I had her on the show, I think last fall or last spring, whenever it was, when she was coming through town on another time. She's fascinating too. I mean, just so that whole group playing these tunes is going to be just dynamite. So the Beatles Reimagined, November 9th, 7:30 p.m., Assembly Hall, 410 Kenilworth Avenue in Kenilworth. It's right by the train station. For those of you who are downtown, take the metro, go straight up there, get off, walk on over, see the show, KenilworthAssemblyHall.com. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say JakeShapiroJazz.com. Go find out about Jake. And we talked before we came on the show. I'm going to have him back on the show because he has a lot of thoughts on music education and how the entrepreneurship part of it should be taught in schools. And he's preaching to the choir with me. So if I started going down that wormhole right now, we'd talk for 3 hours. And the around town would turn into a saga. So we won't do that this time, but I will have you back on, Jake, so that we can talk all about that stuff. Congratulations on the show. Have a great gig November 9th there in Kenilworth. And great to meet you virtually. And hopefully I'll see you in person at some point soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. As I always say, all the information is on ChicagoJazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene. Hey everybody, Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com. And I'm very happy to be joined by two incredible guests today, Ritchie Goods and Chien Liu. They are coming to Promontory November 9th. Of course, that's 5311 South Lake Park Avenue, right there in Hyde Park, PromontoryChicago.com, with their new well, it's not a new project, but their new recording called Connected. And they have an incredibly interesting project. Now, Ritchie and I talked a couple of years ago about a separate project, but when this came out back on my radar, I just thought this was perfect. And the music's incredible. I've taken a listen to some of the YouTube clips they've sent to me, so I'm going to link things up down below so you can check all that out. But November 9th, they're going to be here in Chicago. Ritchie, Chien, thanks for being on the show, and we're looking forward to seeing you here in Chicago.
Thanks so much for having us on the show, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure. So let's talk about this project first of all. How did the two of you get together on this project and put it together? Because it's really fascinating. It happened during COVID, right?
Right. Well, basically, me and Chien met 2019. We were doing a tour together with Jeremy Pelt. I ended up producing her debut record, The Path, that you probably heard, that is done really well. And she also played on the release that you had me on the show about Mulgrew Miller.
Yes.
My Left Hand Man. She played on one song on that. But during the pandemic, we were working together a little bit. So we start practicing during the pandemic just to have something to do since we didn't have any shows. We started writing music together. We thought we were going to release a few singles. It blew up into a whole record. And it was, but the record ended up having a lot of meaning because of all the division in the world that was going on during the pandemic. I mean, it still goes on, but it just seemed like the world was so divided during the pandemic, and we were trying to make sense of it. And so that's what this record spawned out of.
I love the quote that you guys, I don't know if it's on the original recording, but the quote that's in your press stuff that you sent me, and it's a project that would unify people and invoke an imagery of love and peace, which, that could be for every time. But I love that because that's almost like, that's like the mission statement, right, of the entire project.
Oh, it totally is.
Yes.
Totally is. Yeah, well, Chien not being from the United States, and me being an African American, and during the pandemic, there was the Black Lives Matter movement, the Asian hate crimes and everything. And she didn't understand it because she's not from this country. But even myself, I've never really understood it. And we're trying to make sense of everything because we just truly believe we're just one family. We don't really get it. So this is the discussions we were having as we were writing the music. So that's what this project ended up being all about, is instead of doing a project that focused on on virtuoso chops and virtuoso
Right.
skills on our instrument. It's more of a record of that has a meaning that hopefully will, people get a message of uniting people and everything.
So Chen, I've got to ask you, because I'm a percussionist. I went to school for percussion, and those of you that watch the show know that already. But I've got to ask what it's like to compose music and collaborate with a bass player, because you play vibes, four mallets, and all the incredible stuff, right? And you can keyboard, and usually then usually people write music maybe backing up a vocalist or backing up a trumpet player, and they're laying the chords down. But it's got to be something different when you're actually laying down and starting to compose with a bass player who's actually able to talk to the instrument back and forth a little bit differently than you would if you were composing with a pianist or composing with a guitarist, isn't it?
Yeah, but I feel like vibraphone is one of those instruments can play the melody.
Mm-hmm.
So having a bass player is just a complete for my composition process. So that's why I love working with Ritchie, because it's just vibraphone is such a high frequency instrument. So it's really nice to have a bass player when I compose, because it's a contrast.
Do you feel like you get other ideas because you're hearing the lower ends and he's kind of intertwining with some of the melody ideas you're having?
Yes, because before I start to play percussion, I was gonna play cello. So I always like kind of low frequency stuff. But because
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? I didn't tell you? But because I was in the special music education system in Taiwan, so I couldn't pick cello because someone has the higher score than me when we took the entrance exam. So, but we will all major in piano, but because I was not that great, so someone took cello, so I took percussion. But ended up this is the very good arrangement for me.
You think they'll still have a higher score than you now?
Oh,
No,
I don't know, but
well, the thing that's not fair is that they got a higher score, so they got to play cello, and then they put you on percussion. It's like, come on, man, it should be the opposite way around, because percussion, you've got all these different instruments you've got to play. That's not fair.
Well, it could have been worse. They could have put her on bass.
That's true. That's true.
You weren't supposed to agree with that, but
all right. Yeah. Well, so let me just tell everybody. So Promontory, November 9th, 7 p.m. is the doors, 8 p.m. is the concert. Now let's talk about who's going to be with you both. You got a killer group with you, and is this the group that you guys are traveling? By the way, they're in Taiwan right now, so if there's a little delay here and there, you understand why. But this is exciting. I'm glad we got them on. So who's going to be joining you on in the rest of the rhythm section?
Oh man, we have an awesome band. On the drums, Smithsonian. He's one of my homies from Pittsburgh and everything, but a generation after me. But and he's also an amazing singer, so he's gonna sing some with us and everything. And we have Jordan Peters from Canada, but everyone's living in New York now. But Jordan Peters on guitar, and he's awesome as well.
And I should mention, because Ritchie, you were at Promontory before, and I mean, I love that room. It's got that, it's a big enough room where you can get a nice crowd, but it's also gives you that intimate feel in there. Exactly. And everything. Everybody over there is just dynamite. So how did you end up coming to Chicago? Because I remember looking over your schedule, you're kind of, is this a one-off when you're coming through Chicago, or are you on a tour right now?
Kind of. Well, okay. Part of it is, and I should give a big shout out to South Arts and the Jazz Road Tour Grant, because we actually received a tour grant to help supplement this tour. And so right now we're in Taiwan. We've been here for about a week and a half, and we come home tomorrow. I go out and do a few shows with Gloria Gaynor, and then we start our tour, and we're doing Peekskill, New York, Philadelphia, where else? Then Chicago, DC, and Baltimore, and then back home.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people don't understand the cost it takes to take your own music out on the road, and the fact that they have these grants and these other ways to supplement income to be able to do that. These organizations are really doing something, especially for original music, especially when it comes to jazz, because, you know, being able to take a group out on the road and playing jazz is a whole other entity than even playing in other popular music, you know. So shout out to all of them. It's really great, because that's the only way a lot of this creativity can get out of New York or get out of Chicago, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing. Coming from New York to Chicago, that could be difficult unless you're on a tour bus tour, like with travel costs and hotels.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do that without support.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I want to have everybody one more time, Promontory, November 9th. And I should also mention ritchiegoods.com and chenjenlu.com, so you can get more information on both of them before they come to Chicago. And guys, thanks so much for jumping on. I know it's, I don't know, what time is it there in Taiwan? It's late, I think, in Taiwan right now, but I'm glad you guys are up and about.
11:20.
Oh,
PM.
okay. That's not too bad.
12
then.
hours ahead. Well, no, 13 hours ahead of you.
Right. 13 hours ahead of us. And that's like jazz time, right? So you guys are just getting ready to go out.
I know, normally, but we're flying back tomorrow to do shows and everything. So
Oh, you
I
guys.
think our night, maybe it's not done for the night.
One
We'll
more
see.
drink. One more drink.
All right. Well, guys, it's been
One more
a
drink.
blast, and I look forward to meeting you both in person in Chicago. Thanks so much for jumping on. And as I always tell everybody, thank you for watching. All the information is at chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see somebody out on the scene.